I still remember that morning in Seattle, the kind of gray light that filters through layers of heavy clouds, and the sound of rain tapping rhythmically against the glass walls of Helios Dynamics. The air inside felt muted, as if someone had turned down the volume of the world by half. I walked in, coffee still warm in my hand, and instantly knew something was wrong. My office on the 14th floor, the small, quiet room where I'd spent 12 years, my island of silence in a company built on noise and ambition, no longer belonged to me. My black leather chair, the one molded to my shape after a decade of long nights, was occupied by someone else. A young man, legs on my desk, white sneakers streaked with dried mud that hadn't seen soap since last spring. In his hand was a phone, live streaming, his voice filling the room through the speaker. "I call this my first day running the engineering division," he said, smiling with the innocent confidence of someone who's never faced a consequence in his life. "We're going to change how America uses energy, folks." I didn't move. No one in the team even dared to breathe. I looked around. The same engineers who'd stayed up with me patching code at 3 in the morning, the ones who understood how one misplaced bracket could bring down an entire grid, now sat frozen, heads lowered, silently praying I wouldn't lose my temper. His name was Blake Rowe, 26, stepson of Nathan Rowe, CEO of Helios. I'd met him once at a company gala, where he'd pitched me his big idea about building AI platforms for pets. I'd laughed then, thinking he'd grow out of it. I was wrong. He looked at me through the phone camera and grinned. "You must be Evelyn, right? My dad said you're the smartest one here. Awesome. We'll be working together. Don't be too serious, okay?" Then he turned back to the live stream and waved a thumbs up. "This is the Helios Dynamics headquarters in Seattle, and this is my new office." A few awkward chuckles rippled through the room. Someone pretended to type something urgent. I stayed silent, not angry, not shocked, just a cold, precise sensation sliding through me like the spark of a short circuit. I set my coffee down outside the doorway, stepped forward, and looked straight at him. I said quietly, but loud enough for everyone to hear, "You just triggered Clause 7. He raised an eyebrow, still smiling. "Clause 7? What's that? Some kind of inside joke?" I didn't answer. I looked past him, through the wide glass wall where rain streaked down in silver lines, catching the pale Seattle light. The city below blurred into mist. I felt calm, almost peaceful. Clause 7. I'd read it 3 months ago when the legal team was still fighting over the wording of our merger contract with Energic Systems. I remembered every word, every space, every comma. Any act that damages corporate reputation or impersonates executive authority during the pending merger may result in immediate contract termination. I was the only one at Helios who'd actually read it. Everyone else had been too busy celebrating. I walked out, leaving Blake to talk to his thousands of viewers. The rain hit harder against the windows as I moved down the hall. Someone whispered, "Are you okay?" I nodded. At Helios, people thought my quiet meant patience. No one ever realized silence was just the sound of me planning. On my desk still sat last week's blueprints, control grid schematics, power modulation data, strings of code that had become my second language. I gathered them neatly, placed them in an old cardboard box. It wasn't the dramatic kind of packing people expected. It was the calm routine of someone who'd already decided what comes next. I unclipped my badge, set it on the desk, and paused for a moment. A knock on the door. "Sarah, my project assistant." "Blake says you should transfer your access credentials to him," she said, her voice trembling. "Tell him," I replied, "that my access can't be transferred. It's hardwired into the system." She nodded uncertainly and left. I glanced around the room one last time. My old dog's photo, the white porcelain cup, the fading words still scrawled on the whiteboard: predict, prevent, power the future. I turned off the lights, lifted the box, and stepped into the hallway. My footsteps echoed evenly, merging with the rain outside. I wasn't angry, I wasn't sad, only light, like I'd been waiting for this moment all along. I knew Clause 7 wouldn't just cost them a merger, it would make them realize who truly powered the current running through what they called Helios. As the elevator doors slid shut, I caught my reflection in the steel surface, calm, steady. Then a sharp notification pinged from my phone. A new email. I knew exactly what it was. 3 words that would shake the entire building I'd just walked out of. Clause 7. 3 months earlier, when everyone at the company was still drunk on the dream of becoming America's first green unicorn, I was alone in the engineering lab, reading through every line of the merger contract with Energic Systems. Helios was caught in a fever back then. The executives called it a new era. The engineers competed to pitch projects that would change the future. And Nathan Rowe, the CEO, spoke like a man who believed he had already touched history. I remember that day clearly. The 20th floor conference room was bright, full of people in new suits. Nathan stood at the center, smiling at everyone, his voice booming through the mic. We're merging with Energix, and Helios will become the global symbol of energy innovation. I want every one of you to know that your work is recognized. Then he turned toward me, the smile never fading. And especially you, Evelyn. No one understands our system better than you. After the merger, you'll lead the global division. I want you in the position you deserve. The room burst into applause. I just nodded. I've never believed in promises, but I always remember them, like variables waiting to be verified later. In the days that followed, I hardly left the lab. My team and I ran endless diagnostics on the Helios Grid Intelligence System, the heart of the deal. We patched bugs, optimized transmission routes, and rewrote predictive algorithms for New York's power grid. Everyone believed this was the turning point in Helios's history. I did too, at least then. Then, one Saturday night, while reviewing my technical notes, I received a strange email. The subject line read, Leadership Proposal. It looked like someone had sent an internal thread to the wrong recipient. When I opened it, there were only 4 short lines. After review, the position of VP Global Engineering should be assigned to Blake Rowe. Despite his lack of experience, he offers stronger media representation and a friendlier image to the press. Evelyn Hart may continue supporting the team in a technical capacity, but is not a suitable face for global leadership. At the bottom was Nathan's signature. I read it again and again, feeling a cold emptiness spread through me, not from surprise, but from how suddenly everything made sense. I saved the email without replying. Outside, the city lights shimmered and traffic moved like data streams flowing through my mind. I wasn't angry, I just took note. The following week, during a board meeting, Nathan told everyone I had chosen to step back into technical work, that I wasn't interested in titles or power. I watched him say it, calm as stone, and the others assumed it was true. Afterward, a colleague leaned over and whispered, "You're not going to react?" I said simply, "Not yet." From that day, I started rereading every legal document tied to the merger. The contract was over 400 pages long, packed with jargon and overlapping clauses. Most people cared only about the numbers, how much money, how many shares, how much power. I cared about how it could all fall apart. I found it on page 46, a short paragraph buried between hundreds of lines, almost invisible. Clause 7. Any act that damages the reputation or misrepresents executive authority by the acquired party during the pre-signing period may result in immediate termination of the agreement at the sole discretion of the buyer. I read it again, then a third time. The wording was razor sharp. It was clearly written by Energix's legal team, a safeguard against Helios's leadership. I printed it out and marked it in yellow. The next day, I brought a copy to legal and asked jokingly, "Does this clause actually hold up?" The contract officer laughed. "Oh, that's just there to reassure the buyer. No one's foolish enough to trigger it." I smiled and nodded. "Right," I said. "No one's that foolish." The truth was, I didn't want to believe Helios would ever cross that line. I'd given 12 years to this system, built it from the first lines of code. But faith in leadership's honesty was a luxury I'd lost long ago. Nathan wasn't just lying. He was grooming Blake to replace me, to turn the merger into a family victory. From that moment, every night, I backed up the technical data. Each time, I saved another copy to my personal drive. I documented everything, cataloged every piece of intellectual property, not because anyone asked me to, but because instinct told me to. I knew that if the day came, the evidence would speak for itself. A month later, Nathan introduced Blake to the company. He'll be managing communications and supporting the Helios Grid project, Nathan said to a crowded auditorium. Young, creative, and the perfect face for our new image. I sat in the third row and clapped lightly. No one noticed the smile on my face. That night, I came home late. Rain was falling hard. I made tea, opened the contract again, and placed the printed copy in front of me. Clause 7 sat there, small and quiet, like a trap hidden inside a maze of legal words. I circled it with my pen and wrote a note in the margin. If they want a power game, they'll get one, by the rules they wrote themselves. Then I turned off the light and left the document on my desk. The Seattle rain kept falling, the city lights reflecting off the white paper. And I knew, someday soon, Clause 7 would no longer be ink on a page. It would be the answer. That morning carried a strange kind of quiet, not the peace before a new day, but the stiffness of something off balance. Seattle was still raining, thin streams sliding down the glass walls of Helios, a gray light spreading through the halls. I arrived early, as always. My coffee was still steaming. The scent of plastic from the electronics mixed with the damp smell of freshly cleaned carpet. When the elevator doors opened, I knew something was wrong. The engineering team was gathered near the workstations, whispering, glancing toward my office. In the middle stood Blake Rowe, white shirt, sleeves rolled, hair slicked like he was getting ready for a photo shoot, not for work. Two people from the media team stood beside him, one already recording on a phone. I call this the first day of a new era, Blake said, his voice loud and confident. Helios will become the green tech symbol of this century. We, the new generation, will make it happen. I stopped near the coffee counter, hearing a few awkward chuckles from the younger staff. They weren't laughing because it was funny, just because they didn't know what else to do. He was sitting in my office, legs on my desk, the chair turned toward the phone camera. This, Blake said, pointing at me as I stepped to the doorway, is Evelyn Hart, the one who built the old system. She'll help me transition into full control. Right, Evelyn? The whole room held its breath. I looked at him. That smug smile, the glow of the screen on his face. I answered slowly. I'll help anyone who knows what they're doing. The air tightened. Someone coughed softly. Blake laughed, lifting the phone higher. That's such an engineer's joke. I like it. Then he turned back to his viewers, his tone brightening again. This is Helios Dynamics headquarters, and we are leading the future. I didn't say another word. I walked to my desk outside the office and started the printer. The hum of the machine blended into the morning noise. When the first sheet slid out, I took a yellow marker and drew a line across the familiar paragraph. Not because I needed to read it again, but because I wanted to mark the moment when what I knew became real. I placed the papers into an envelope, added screenshots from the live stream, wrote 2 short notes, and clipped them together. Then I opened my laptop. The screen lit up, casting a faint blue light across my hands. I typed a new email, entered the recipient's address, attached the files, and wrote one plain sentence. No decoration, no explanation. When the cursor blinked its last, I pressed send. A single soft ping sounded, and just like that, it was out of my hands. I stood up, slid my laptop into my bag, and opened the drawer to take out an old cardboard box. Inside were only a few things: a photo of my old dog, a USB drive containing the system's version history, and a white mug printed with the words, "I survived a meeting that should have been an email." I smiled, faintly. Maybe that mug had always known the truth. I unclipped my badge and set it on the desk. Blake was still talking, still smiling at his camera, still basking in his own echo. No one in the room dared look at me. I walked past them without a sound. The glass door closed behind me, his voice fading into the hum of rain and cold air filling the corridor. Sarah, the young assistant, called after me. Evelyn, where are you going? I have something to do, I said, stepping into the elevator. As the steel doors slid shut, my reflection stared back, calm, collected. No anger, no regret, just clarity. The kind that comes when every move has already been decided. I walked out of the building, the cold Seattle air brushing my collar. The traffic lights cast red streaks across the wet pavement, glimmering like thin lines of blood in the water. I took a deep breath and stepped forward. Behind me, Helios still glowed as if nothing had happened. But I knew the machine had already started to move. It didn't need an audience. It didn't need noise. It only needed time and silence. The next morning, Seattle was still raining. Long, heavy sheets that made it feel like the city would never dry. I sat in a small cafe on Pike Street, facing the Helios building. My cappuccino had gone cold, steam rising faintly from the rim. I checked my watch. 7:42 a.m. Inside that tower, the legal department was probably opening its first emails of the day, and among them was one they would never forget. I wasn't waiting, just observing. No calls, no messages. I knew Helios's rhythm better than anyone. 8:15, the first legal sync of the morning. 8:20, when they checked the inbox for any correspondence from Energix. And around 8:27, when the subject line from the buyer appeared, urgent, reputational breach inquiry. The air on the 18th floor would already be thick enough to choke on. Inside the building, Nathan Rowe sat in the 20th floor conference room with his directors. The door was closed. The project dashboard still showed charts half finished. Someone had just printed a stack of papers and dropped them on the table. Energix wants an immediate explanation, said Barbara, head of legal, her voice trembling slightly. They claim there's evidence that a Helios representative publicly declared executive authority online. Nathan set his pen down, speaking slowly, trying to sound calm. It's just a joke. The kid was making a fun video. It's the internet. Everyone knows it's not serious. The problem, Barbara replied, is that the video was tagged at Helios headquarters. And worse, it's circulating among investors. They're asking if the merger's already finalized. The room went silent. Nathan exhaled, leaning back in his chair. Then we delete it. Send an apology email, call it a misunderstanding. No need to make it bigger than it is. But Barbara's tone dropped. You don't understand. Clause 7's been triggered. They have the right to freeze the deal if they determine reputational harm. A beat of silence. Then murmurs rippled around the table. Clause 7? One director asked. I thought that was just boilerplate, another answered quietly. It's the clause that allows the buyer to cancel immediately if there's a public misrepresentation. Nathan waved a hand. Nobody cancels a $400 million deal over an internet video. We'll hold a press conference, clarify, and it'll blow over. Barbara looked at him, her eyes tired. Energix isn't a startup. They're a German industrial conglomerate. They don't play games with reputation, and they just sent an official notice. This isn't about social media anymore. She pushed the printed letter toward him. Nathan read it, and the color drained from his face. The first line read, "We have reason to believe that public actions by an individual claiming executive authority within Helios may have caused confusion regarding ownership and leadership structure during the due diligence period." At the bottom was the signature, Energix Legal Affairs Division. Nathan crumpled the paper and slammed it on the table. Who told them? Who sent the evidence? No one answered. Only the rain was tapping hard against the glass. On the lower floors, the staff was starting to hear. In the break room, someone replayed Blake's live stream. The video was deleted, but copies were everywhere. A voice whispered, "Is this real? He's the CEO's son?" Another replied, "Yeah, his stepson. Started last week. He's done now." On the company's internal feed, a message popped up. Legal requests all employees refrain from commenting on the Energix merger. Then Slack went dead, as if someone had unplugged the building itself. Upstairs, Nathan stood. "I'll handle this myself. Draft a press statement. We're going to control the narrative." He turned to the head of communications. "Wipe every trace of the video. Contact all platforms, personal accounts included. I want it gone." Barbara shook her head. "You can't control the internet, Nathan. It's already out there." But he wasn't listening. "Do it," he snapped, "and get Blake in here. I want him to explain himself." No one moved. Finally, a soft voice from the corner said, "He's live streaming again," from the media room. The silence that followed was absolute. At the cafe, my phone buzzed. A message from a former colleague. Do you know what's happening? The whole company's on fire. I set the phone down and looked out the window. The rain had thickened, the streets shrouded in gray mist. I knew this was only the first ripple. Helios was built to never collapse from a technical failure. I had made sure of that. But they'd found another kind of weakness, one made of pride and arrogance. And when people fail, there's no patch fast enough to fix it. I finished my coffee, stood, and pulled on my coat. Across the street, Helios loomed in the rain, its lights cold and unyielding. I looked at it one last time, then turned away. In my mind, the sequence had already begun. They'd try to cover it up, to justify, to find someone to blame, and in doing so, they'd drag themselves down even faster. I stepped out into the downpour. The rain swallowed every sound. In the chill of Seattle's morning, one thought settled in my mind. Collapse doesn't always come with a storm. Sometimes it begins with the first drop they choose to ignore. Rumors spread faster than Seattle rain. Within 24 hours, the name Helios Dynamics was splashed across three of the biggest tech outlets: TechSphere, Business Point, and Greencore Daily. The headlines looked almost identical, as if someone had coordinated them. Helios is in trouble ahead of the merger. The CEO's son is accused of abuse of power. Nathan Rowe stared at the screen, his face pale. The office was bright, but the air felt thick. He sat motionless for a few seconds, then slammed his hand on the desk. We can't let the media control the story. Get PR in here, now. 10 minutes later, the 20th floor conference room was full again. Nathan's voice came out tight through his teeth. We fight back. We tell our own story. He scanned the room, stopping at the young communications lead, Mira. Write a press statement. Right now. What kind of statement, sir? Mira asked quietly. That Blake isn't an official employee, and the video was a misunderstanding. And add... Nathan paused, a thought forming. Add that a former employee is deliberately manipulating the media to sabotage the merger. The room froze. Mira lifted her head. You mean Evelyn Hart? She's the one who sent the email to Energix, isn't she? Who else could it be? Nathan's tone was like steel. She's trying to drag us down with her. Another director spoke up. But she has legal proof. Her email went through our servers, time-stamped, with screenshots. We can't delete that. Nathan smirked. Then we make people believe she had personal motives. A bitter employee, excluded from leadership, is trying to get revenge. Simple. He stood up. Schedule an exclusive interview for me. I'll speak to the press myself. And have IT review every piece of Evelyn's data. I want anything that can discredit her. Emails, files, contracts, messages, anything. No one dared to object. Down in the basement, the cybersecurity team received the order. They exchanged uneasy glances. One of them muttered, "We're seriously hacking the account of the engineer who built Helios's entire security framework?" The team lead hesitated, then said softly, "Do it. Orders are orders." By afternoon, I was at my usual cafe, laptop open. The first headline appeared on my feed. Sources claim former lead engineer Evelyn Hart, recently removed from leadership, is destabilizing the Helios Energix merger. Below it was my photo from an old conference, with a subheadline, Internal conflicts threaten a multi-million-dollar deal. I read slowly, without anger. Stories like that don't kill. They only distract. I took a sip of coffee, the cold light from outside reflecting my face in the laptop screen. I had expected Nathan to try this. He always believed that if he could control the narrative, he could control the truth. My phone buzzed, a text from an unknown number. They're in your system. Don't go home. Check your backups. I didn't need to ask who sent it. A former colleague, one who still owed me a favor for saving the legal department's server months ago. I closed the laptop, checked my device logs. 3 unauthorized logins in the past 4 hours, all from Helios's internal network. They were doing the stupidest thing possible, trying to break into my system. I opened my security console, watching the data streams move. The trace showed they were attempting to download files labeled HL-core/prototype. I smiled. Every one of those files had a defense mechanism. Any unauthorized access triggered an auto logback. sending all access records directly to me. Within 3 minutes, every trace of their intrusion was stored on my private cloud server. I sent a copy to Energic's Legal Security Division with one simple note: unlawful access attempt from Helios internal IP. Timestamp attached. 10 minutes later, their reply came. Thank you. We're opening an internal investigation. Federal authorities will be notified if necessary. I sat still, listening to the rain tapping the cafe window. Sometimes you don't need to fight loudly. You just let them pull the trigger themselves. At Helios, Nathan was starting to feel the pressure. The press release was out, but the response wasn't what he'd hoped. Social media split in two, half defending him, half mocking him. The hashtag Nepotism. Helios began to trend. Blake, meanwhile, stayed oblivious. He posted a new story, a photo with the Helios logo, captioned, "Still here, still running the future." Mira nearly fainted when she saw it. "Mr. Nathan," she gasped. He posted again, and tagged Energix this time. Nathan slammed his palm against the table. "God damn it! Tell him to delete it! Now!" "We tried," Mira said, voice shaking. "But it's already been shared over 2,000 times. The more we delete, the faster it spreads." Nathan said nothing. He grabbed his phone and dialed. "Blake, get down to my office. Now." No one knew exactly what happened next, but 20 minutes later, a loud crash echoed down the hallway. Someone nearby heard Nathan shouting, "You just destroyed the whole company." By late afternoon, Helios had fallen into an eerie silence. Employees worked with a nervous energy. Some deleted their LinkedIn profiles. Others changed their photos. In the boardroom, Barbara opened a new email from Energix. "We have detected unauthorized access attempts originating from Helios targeting a third party's personal system. According to protocol, this constitutes a serious breach. The merger will be suspended pending investigation." She looked up. Nathan sat slumped forward, hands gripping the table. "Could anything else possibly get worse?" he asked quietly. Barbara's voice was calm, almost gentle. "Worse? Yes. If they find out the person they attacked owns the system's core." A long silence filled the room. Then Nathan lifted his head, his voice rough. "Who would be stupid enough to send the evidence to Energix?" Barbara met his eyes. "Someone who knows exactly what she's doing." That night, I got home late. The city glowed through the rain, traffic lights stretching like molten threads across wet asphalt. I opened my laptop. Dozens of new notifications appeared. Emails from lawyers, replies from Energix, and a short message from an old friend. They're panicking. I leaned back in my chair and poured a glass of white wine. I didn't feel joy, only stillness. Everything was unfolding with mechanical precision, just as I'd designed it. There was nothing left to explain. Outside, the rain shimmered silver under the streetlights. Somewhere in the city, Helios still burned bright. But that light had started to flicker. A simple signal, but unmistakable. The system was failing. The next morning, the sky over Seattle was thick with fog. The rain had stopped, but everything remained damp and heavy, as if the air itself was holding a secret. I sat in a small cafe by Lake Union at my usual table by the window. My laptop was open in front of me, a cup of jasmine tea steaming gently beside it. I no longer worked for Helios. Now I work for Horizon Logic, the company I founded 2 years ago, in complete silence. Back then, it was meant to be nothing more than a legal shell, a quiet safeguard to protect the algorithms I'd written in case Helios ever went off the rails. I didn't think that day would come so soon. But now, Horizon Logic wasn't just a cover, it was the fortress I'd built. And the only one I needed. I opened an old system file. The first line appeared clearly: "Licensed to Helios Dynamics by Horizon Logic, LLC." I read it again, calm and steady. The core system that powered Helios, the platform controlling its entire energy, data, and operations network, didn't actually belong to Helios. I had developed it, copyrighted it under my own company, and licensed it to Helios for a 24-month term. Every clause was legal, every signature valid, every detail airtight. No one on the executive team had ever read the technical appendix carefully enough to notice the clause tucked inside. I opened my inbox and began drafting an email to Energix's legal department. The company is currently trying to acquire Helios. Dear Energix team, I confirm that the middleware currently in use by Helios Dynamics is licensed through Horizon Logic LLC, a company I fully own and operate. Attached are the licensing documents, copyright registration, and the contract term for your review. Sincerely, Evelyn Hart. I read it once more, then sent it. No extra lines, no explanations. The truth, when stated plainly, doesn't need to raise its voice. About an hour later, I received their reply. It was brief. Thank you, Ms. Hart. We have received the documentation and are reviewing it. Should Clause 7 be applied, Energix remains interested in continuing direct collaboration with Horizon Logic to maintain and protect the core technology. I reread the message, feeling the weight lift from my chest. Helios might be collapsing, but their technology, the thing that kept them alive, still flowed through me. From that moment, the balance shifted. I was no longer the one being cast out. I was the one they needed. That afternoon, a message came from an old contact inside Helios. They're in chaos. No one dares touch the core system. Energix froze the deal pending investigation. Nathan's losing it. I didn't reply. I just looked at the screen, then opened my monitoring software. Signals from Helios's servers appeared in neat rows. Everything was still running normally, but one entry stood out. Someone inside Helios was trying to unlock the file Horizon Licensing Registry.xml. 3 failed password attempts triggered an automatic alert to both me and Energix. Unauthorized access detected from the Helios Dynamics network. 10 minutes later, another email arrived, this time from Helios Legal. Evelyn, we need to talk, urgently. I stared at the line for a long time, then shut the screen. There was nothing left to say. They'd had their answer all along. They just refused to read it. While I sat quietly in the cafe, across the city, Helios was burning from the inside. Nathan was pacing the conference room, a paper trembling in his hand. She's claiming the technology belongs to her own company? That's impossible. I paid her salary for 10 years. Barbara, the head of legal, spoke softly, her voice hoarse. Everything checks out, Nathan. She registered the company, filed the copyright, and signed a licensing agreement. And you approved it. Nathan froze. Me? Yes. Your signature's on the last page. He stared at it, his own name, curved and permanent, like it was proof of a crime he hadn't realized he'd committed. Barbara continued, She didn't steal anything. She just understands the system better than anyone in this building. The room went silent. No one argued. They all knew it. The rules had changed, and the one rewriting them was me. That evening, as I left the cafe, the rain started again. Soft, steady. The streetlights stretched across the puddles, glowing like blurred lines of code flowing through the dark. I checked my phone. A new message from Energix was waiting. We have reviewed the documents. In the event that Helios loses operational rights, Energix is prepared to negotiate directly with you and Horizon Logic. I slipped the phone into my coat pocket and walked across the wet street. My steps were slow, unhurried, without thrill or triumph. Just quiet, the rare kind that comes when you've waited long enough for the truth to reveal itself. In the distance, the Helios Tower still burned bright, hundreds of glass panes reflecting cold white light. But I knew the truth. That light no longer belonged to them. I had taken it back, line by line, with the very thing they underestimated most. Silence. The next morning, Seattle looked like it had just woken from a long, fevered dream. The sky was dull gray, clouds hanging low and heavy, matching the mood of hundreds of Helios employees staring at their monitors, reading the latest notice on the internal system. All integration activities with Energix systems are suspended until further notice. All technical access and data systems are temporarily locked for investigation. No one needed to read the fine print. Everyone knew the merger was dead. On the top floor, the Helios boardroom was full. Gone was the usual pride and posturing. What remained was tension. thick and airless. Nathan Rowe sat at the head of the table, hands clenched, eyes sunken. Barbara, the head of legal, placed a stack of papers in front of him. "This is the official statement from Energix," she said, her voice drained. "They've suspended the deal under Clause 7, citing reputational and intellectual property violations that remain unresolved." Nathan closed his eyes. "Can we renegotiate?" Barbara shook her head. "Not this time, Nathan. Energix has already notified the International Trade and Investment Commission. It's out of our hands." Silence filled the room. The clock on the wall ticked loudly enough for everyone to hear. One of the younger directors spoke softly, trying to keep his voice steady. "We could reach out to Hart. Evelyn. Maybe she can—" Nathan cut him off. "No. She started this. She wants revenge." Barbara looked up, her gaze sharp as glass. "I don't think so. If she wanted revenge, she would have gone public. She only sent the documents to Energix. That means she's protecting something, maybe her own system." A few people nodded. Someone exhaled quietly. No one said another word, but everyone understood. Helios was now an empty shell. Across the city, I sat in my apartment in Capitol Hill, laptop open as the alerts poured in. Social media was on fire. Blake's posts, the CEO's son, had become the tech world's favorite joke. The hashtag #NepoEnergy was trending at the top. Small investors were dumping Helios stock in panic, and Energix had just issued a brief statement. Due to serious breaches of confidentiality and ethical conduct during due diligence, Energix Systems has decided to suspend the merger with Helios Dynamics. 14 lines. Enough to wipe 38% off Helios's market value in a single day. I read it quietly. Not angry, not triumphant. Just a strange stillness, like watching a system I'd once built unravel perfectly according to its own logic. Around noon, my phone rang. An unfamiliar number. A tired, raspy voice answered when I picked up. "Evelyn, this is Barbara." "I know," I said calmly. "I figured you'd call eventually." "I won't waste time," she said. "We need you." I leaned back in my chair, eyes tracing the thin lines of rain streaking down the window. "Do you need me, or does Helios need me?" Silence. Then she said softly, "Both." "I'm not coming back," I replied. "Evelyn, I understand. But if you don't help, the Helios Grid project will be shut down. Over 400 people will lose their jobs. And I know, no matter how angry you are at Nathan, you still care about what you built." I didn't answer right away. She was right about one thing. I didn't want to see the system I created buried under their incompetence. But I also couldn't pretend nothing had happened. "Barbara," I said slowly, "I won't work for Helios again. If they want the system to keep running, they'll have to work with Horizon Logic. On my terms." "What terms?" she asked quietly. "Three," I said. "One, full technical authority. Two, a direct contract between Energix and Horizon Logic. Helios stays out of it. And three, Nathan Rowe steps down as CEO." The line went dead silent. I could hear her breathing, then a soft sigh. "I don't know if they'll agree." "They will," I said, "because without me, Helios has nothing left." At that same moment, in the Helios headquarters, an emergency meeting was underway. Barbara relayed our conversation. When she finished, Nathan shot up from his chair. "Absolutely not. She wants to push me out of my own company?" Barbara met his glare. "Nathan, this isn't your company anymore. You signed every document. She owns the core software. Energix holds the right to cancel the deal. If you don't step down, it's over." Nathan fell silent. For the first time in years, he didn't shout, just a hollow, bewildered stare. Another director whispered, "Maybe we should listen to her." "Listen to a traitor?" Nathan snapped. Barbara's reply was cold. "Not a traitor, Nathan. The only person left who can save what you destroyed." The room fell quiet. Finally, Nathan sank back into his chair, the sound of defeat loud as the rain outside. That night, I received an email. No subject line, no greeting, just one sentence. "We accept your terms. Meeting at 9 a.m. tomorrow." I stared at the screen, the blue glow lighting my face. Outside, the rain had returned, tapping the window like a slow countdown. Tomorrow, Helios would kneel, not because I won, but because they built the pedestal I'm standing on. The next morning, I arrived earlier than planned. Energic's headquarters stood in the heart of the city, a tall glass tower reflecting Seattle's dim gray sky. The wind cut across my face, sharp and cold, but I felt wide awake. It wasn't nerves. It was the steady calm of someone who knew she was walking in at the exact right moment. The lobby was quiet. The receptionist smiled politely, checked my appointment, and escorted me to the 20th floor. When the elevator doors opened, I stepped into a long hallway bathed in cold, white light. At the end stood a conference room with glass walls. Through them, I could already see the faces: Helios's board, Energix's representatives, and Barbara. Nathan Rowe sat at the head of the table. He looked like a man who hadn't slept in days: hollow cheeks, deep shadows under his eyes, his once crisp suit creased and worn. Gone was the confidence of the man who had forced me out of my own project. Beside him sat Blake, hair unkempt, his expression that of someone who'd just learned privilege doesn't come with immunity. When I entered, the room fell silent. Barbara stood and gave a small, weary smile. "Thank you for coming, Evelyn," I nodded. "Thank you for inviting me." I took my seat across from them. No one spoke for several seconds, only the faint rhythm of rain tapping against the windows. Then Keller, the silver-haired Energix representative, began. "Ms. Hart, thank you for cooperating. We've reviewed Horizon Logic's documentation and confirmed that the middleware operating Helios's core infrastructure is legally owned by you. We'd like to discuss the possibility of direct collaboration moving forward." Nathan leaned forward sharply. "Hold on. Collaboration? That system was built with Helios's funding." Keller's tone didn't waver. "Funding does not equal intellectual property, Mr. Rowe. Ms. Hart has the registration records, the license agreement, and your signature confirming it." Nathan's face went pale. He turned to Barbara, but she only nodded. "They're right, Nathan." I looked around the table, my voice calm but firm. I made it clear in my email. I don't want to destroy Helios. I just want to make sure the system I built isn't controlled by people who don't understand it or don't deserve to. If Energix wants to continue the project, I'm willing to license it directly to them under new conditions. Keller nodded. "We've reviewed your proposal. 3 terms, correct?" "That's right," I said. "Full technical authority, a new contract between Energix and Horizon Logic, independent of Helios. And Nathan Rowe resigns as CEO." Nathan shot up from his chair, his voice breaking. "You're asking for the impossible. I built this company. I gave my life." I interrupted softly, but clearly. "And you also signed every document that gave up your control. I'm just following the process you approved." The room thickened with silence. Barbara took a deep breath. "Nathan, listen. To me. If you don't step down, Helios collapses. The merger dies, the stock crashes, and you'll be forced out anyway. This way, at least, you keep a shred of dignity." Nathan froze. His eyes met mine. Anger, despair, and resignation all tangled together. Finally, he sat back down, his voice hoarse. "If I step down, you'll keep your word?" "I will." He nodded slowly, then lowered his head and signed the withdrawal document. The sound of the pen scratching paper echoed through the room, dry, final, and cold. Keller spoke up, breaking the tension. "Good. Then we can move forward. Energix will formalize the licensing agreement with Horizon Logic. We'd also like to offer you a seat on the new Helios executive board after restructuring." I tilted my head slightly. "I'm not looking to be anyone's employee. I'll manage the system, but I answer to no one." Keller smiled faintly. "Understood. You'll have an independent vote on the technical council." I nodded. "When do we sign?" "Today." A legal associate entered, carrying a freshly printed stack of contracts. I read every page carefully, the new partnership agreement between Energix and Horizon Logic. Every clause was clear. Every right stayed in my hands. I signed, my stroke sharp and deliberate. Keller signed next, then passed the pen to Barbara. Nathan didn't look up. His hands were clasped tight, knuckles white. Blake kept his head bowed, silent. When it was done, Keller rose to shake my hand. Congratulations, Ms. Hart. Helios can operate again, under new management. Thank you, I said. But it's not Helios anymore. It's Horizon Helios. Keller chuckled softly. A new name for a new era, I suppose. I gathered my papers and stood. This era won't have room for complacency. Then I turned and walked toward the door. The glass closed behind me, reflecting their faces. The same people who once believed power couldn't be taken from them. In the elevator, I caught my reflection in the dim mirror. No celebration, no fireworks, just quiet, deep and real. I hadn't sought revenge. I'd simply reclaimed what was mine in the only way they never saw coming. When I stepped outside, the rain had stopped. Noonlight filtered through the clouds, touching the glass tower behind me. For the first time in years, I felt unburdened. No anger, no fear. Only one thing remained: freedom. That day, Helios died. But Horizon Helios was born under my hand. That evening, Seattle was unusually quiet. The rain had stopped completely, and the last rays of sunlight shimmered across the wet streets as if the city itself had been rinsed clean after the storm. I sat in my new office, just a few blocks from the old Helios building. Yet it felt like a lifetime away. The room was small and simple. No logo, no glass walls, no boardroom shine. On the wall hung a single-framed map of the Horizon Helios energy network, lines of data branching out like veins in a living organism. Everything now flowed through me: the access keys, the licenses, the contracts, the safety systems, even the operating permits Helios once flaunted as its crown jewel. My laptop glowed with new notifications. Partners, investors, even corporations that once ignored me were now flooding my inbox with offers. Some began with, "We've always admired your work." Others with, "Helios never deserved you." I didn't reply. I simply flagged each one and read them slowly. After years of being dismissed, my silence spoke louder than any statement I could make. When the screen dimmed, I stood and stepped out onto the balcony. The city below moved as if nothing had happened. Cars gliding through wet streets, neon reflections dancing across the glass. But I knew better. In the corporate world, even the smallest shift could reorder the board entirely, and this time I had made the first move. The phone buzzed softly on my desk. It was Barbara. Her voice was tired, but lighter. "We've finished the restructuring. Energix now holds the controlling stake, and Helios has officially been renamed Horizon Helios. You're listed as Chief Technical Officer and co-founder." I smiled. "Thank you, Barbara." "No," she said quietly. "Thank you. Without you, there'd be nothing left to save." We fell silent for a moment. Then she asked gently, "Are you coming back to the main office?" "I don't think so. I want the system running. I just don't need to stand inside it anymore. Once it's stable, I'll step back." "I understand," Barbara said. "You've always done things your own way." When the call ended, I stayed there, watching the light fade over the rooftops. The sun was setting behind the gray clouds, scattering a pale gold glow over the damp skyline. A simple evening, but for me, it felt like closure. I brewed tea, sat down, and reopened the system dashboard. Everything was steady. No unauthorized access, no faults. The data streams flowed smoothly across the screen, calm as a heartbeat. In the corner glowed the new logo, Horizon Helios, managed by Horizon Logic. I read it again and again, not because I doubted it, but because I wanted to remember this feeling. The moment when my name finally stood in the right place, under the right title. That night, I left late. On the way home, I passed the old Helios building. The sign had already been stripped away, leaving only the bare metal frame. The dim light caught on streaks of water across the glass, casting a cold, empty glow. I stopped for a few seconds, looking at the place that once meant everything to me. No anger, no regret, only stillness. I remembered my first day there 16 years ago, clutching a lunchbox and a thin stack of documents, believing I'd found a place to spend my life, that loyalty would be rewarded. I was wrong. In that world, loyalty isn't honored. Power is. And true power isn't about who yells the loudest. It's about knowing when to stay silent and when to strike. I kept walking. My footsteps echoed softly on the damp sidewalk. The wind carried the smell of salt and rain from the bay. The city lights flickered on one by one, each window glowing like a pulse in a network I had designed myself. I felt part of it again, not as an employee, but as the architect. When I got home, I opened the window. The night air slipped in, cool and wet, carrying the faint hum of traffic. On the desk, my computer was still on, displaying a new message: exclusive consulting proposal, Energix Global Expansion Project. I smiled. A perfect circle. I poured a glass of white wine and sat by the window. Outside, the drizzle returned, raindrops streaking the glass like traces of old memories. I breathed deeply and closed my eyes, letting the sound wash over me. No applause, no spotlight, no one to tell this story but me. But I knew somewhere in the cold world of boardrooms and contracts, my name would surface, not as the woman who was cast out of Helios, but as the one who turned Clause 7 into the most elegant counter-strike in merger history. I set the glass down and looked outside. The lake shimmered under the city lights, a quiet rhythm pulsing across its surface. A faint breeze stirred the curtains as I whispered to myself, barely audible. Silence isn't weakness. It's the stillness before the button is pressed. I smiled, then closed the laptop. Outside, Seattle moved on as if nothing had changed. But I knew, after every storm, every system rewrites itself. And this time, the one in control is me. I watched the lights shimmer over Lake Union, each reflection like the city's quiet heartbeat. My story ends here, but I know there are others out there, still silent in rooms where power plays out. If you've ever been underestimated, overlooked, or pushed aside, remember this: silence isn't surrender, it's timing. Which moment in this story stayed with you the most? Leave a comment below. I read every one of them. And don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next story where justice finds its way in the most unexpected form. Thank you for listening.